Hey man, here's a truth. Most men never realize until it's too late. Turning a woman's attraction into obsession isn't about being louder, flashier, or more alpha. It's not about playing games or being toxic. It's not about manipulation. It's about mystery, stillness, silence. The most powerful shift you can create in a woman's mind happens not through words, but through the energy you pull back with. See, desire is born from attention, but obsession, that's born from the sudden absence of it. That's the silent switch. That's the invisible button that flips her from he's nice to I can't stop thinking about him. And if you don't understand it, you'll spend your life giving too much, too soon, and killing her curiosity before it ever matures into hunger. You ever wonder why she pulled away just when things were going well? Why she lost interest right after opening up to you? It's because the mystery died. The chase ended. You over-validated. You gave her what she didn't even realize she was still trying to earn. And the minute she subconsciously feels that she has you, when there's no puzzle left to solve, her desire decays. That's the paradox of feminine attraction. The more certain she is of your attention, the less she values it. But the moment you withdraw, the moment you pull back without explanation, the moment you stop reacting and start observing, her brain ignites. She replays your last message. She rewatches your stories. She wonders what shifted, and that wondering is the birthplace of obsession. What you need to understand is this: women don't become obsessed with men who try to please them. They become obsessed with the men who leave space, emotional space, mental space, space for her to imagine, to project, to chase. Because feminine energy is reactive. It thrives on filling in the blanks. And when you give her too many answers, when you're always available, always affirming, always showing your cards, there's nothing left for her to pursue. But when you pause mid-sentence, when you delay that text, when you change the rhythm of your communication, not as a tactic, but as a natural shift in energy, that turns her mind upside down. That's the moment the switch is flipped, and you didn't even have to say a word. There's something intoxicating about a man who doesn't explain himself, who can be warm and present, but disappear without warning, not as punishment, not to play games, but because he's simply rooted in his own world, his own mission, his own rhythm. That kind of man creates a vacuum, a space that feels magnetic, and women don't understand it. All they know is they want more attention, more connection, more of your time. But here's the catch: you don't give it on demand. You don't rush to reassure. You don't reward panic with presence. You let her feel the distance, let her sit in the silence. And it's in that silence that obsession begins to form. Most guys fear silence. They fear pulling back. They fear being forgotten. So they stay consistent, over-communicate, always check in, always double text. And in doing so, they suffocate the spark. They drown the flame with effort. But the man who knows his value, the man who walks away to focus, to create, to breathe, he becomes unforgettable because his energy isn't dependent on her validation. His silence isn't a threat, it's a standard. And when she senses that you're not afraid to walk away, not to punish, but to protect your peace, that is when her obsession begins. Not when you talk, but when you stop talking. Desire is easy to trigger, a compliment, a strong jawline, some status. But obsession, that takes something deeper. Obsession is born when she realizes she can't figure you out, when she feels deeply connected but doesn't fully understand you, when you're emotionally available but not emotionally needy, when you can be present with her but vanish the next day to handle your purpose. That's the silent switch. That's the moment she goes from "he's nice" to "why am I checking my phone every 5 minutes?" And the most powerful part, it doesn't feel wrong. It feels personal. It feels earned. She thinks she's falling deeper by choice, but in reality, she's being pulled into the gravity of your stillness. Understand this, brother. Silence isn't absence, it's presence, redirected inward. When you go quiet, when you stop pursuing, when you let the moment breathe, you're not abandoning her, you're creating contrast. You're reminding her that your energy is a gift, not a given, that your presence has weight, that it's not something she's entitled to, but something she earns through alignment. This isn't about manipulation, it's about emotional economics. Scarcity creates value, and when your attention becomes rare, deliberate, and unpredictable, she begins to chase it like water in a desert. And once she starts chasing, obsession begins. The switch isn't something you push in her, it's something you pull back in yourself. It's not about punishing her with distance, it's about remembering your own gravity. It's about stepping back not to punish her absence, but to reconnect with your own presence. And in that move, in that unapologetic return to self, you stop orbiting her, you stop waiting, you stop reacting, and the moment you stop reacting, she starts wondering. And wondering is everything, because women don't get obsessed with what's obvious. They get obsessed with what's uncertain, with what lingers, with what disappears just long enough to make her question herself. You want her to obsess, make her feel something she can't categorize. Be warm, then distant. Be deep, then gone. Be available, then unreachable. Not as a trick, but as a reflection of your depth. You're not a vending machine, predictable, available, on call. You're a force. You're a wave. You move with purpose. You give when it's right, not when it's asked. And the moment she feels that you're not emotionally choreographed to her demands, the moment she feels that your affection isn't transactional, she begins to chase it. Not because you manipulated her, but because your self-respect activated her imagination. And nothing grows obsession faster than imagination. Never underestimate the power of inconsistency with intention. Not flakiness, not dishonesty, but rhythm. You show up, make her feel safe, seen, desired. Then you retreat, not as punishment, but because you have a life. You let the warmth linger. You leave her wanting, not empty, not abandoned, but curious. And that curiosity, that emotional hunger, it grows in your absence, it multiplies. And before she knows it, she's replaying moments in her head. She's rereading texts. She's wondering why she cares so much. And the truth? It's because you didn't flood her. You dripped. You let desire become hunger. You let interest become obsession. And all you had to do was stop speaking. You ever notice how the man she obsesses over is never the loudest in the room? He's not the one posting daily selfies, flooding her phone with emojis, or begging for a reply. He's the one who disappears for 2 days and comes back like nothing happened. Not because he's playing games, but because he was immersed in his world. He's not ignoring her, he's just not orbiting her. And that throws her off, because most men scramble to keep her attention, but he doesn't. And that contrast, that unexpected silence, that gap between touch points, it builds tension, and tension, when left unresolved, becomes obsession. The switch happens in the emotional void. When she reaches out and you don't instantly reply, when she posts something for your attention and you don't take the bait, when she starts to feel the emotional weight of your absence and realizes that she misses you, not the conversations, not the compliments, you, your energy, your validation, your presence, and it drives her wild because you didn't force the craving, you let it build. You understood that obsession is never created through pressure. It's created through space, through silence, through restraint. And most men don't have that level of control. See, obsession begins when a woman can no longer predict your emotional patterns, when she stops being able to box you into categories, when she's unsure whether you're thinking of her or thinking of something greater. That ambiguity, that emotional unavailability, that's not rude, not arrogant, just disconnected from need. It flips a switch. She starts asking herself, what does he feel for me? What is he doing right now? Why do I feel this much when he's so calm? And the lack of clarity, it haunts her, it breeds tension. And in the silence between answers, obsession grows. Every woman has a catalogue of men in her past. Men who over-pursued, overshared, over-texted. Men who killed the mystery before the story could even begin. But the man she obsesses over, he's the exception. He's the chapter that never quite closed. The message that never got a reply. The energy that felt too grounded to be owned. And she revisits him over and over, in her mind, in her dreams, in her choices, because something about him felt unfinished. Something about his presence left a fingerprint on her nervous system, and that mark wasn't made by noise, it was made by the echo of his silence. There's a difference between being ignored and being unbothered. Most men try to go silent as a tactic. They pull away hoping to create desire, but it reeks of desperation. She can feel the emotional manipulation. She knows you're sitting there refreshing her page, hoping she notices. But a man who is truly silent internally, not just externally, that man is dangerous. Because he's not trying to be chased, he's simply living. His world doesn't revolve around her. And when a woman senses that your silence is rooted in peace, not punishment, that's when her brain can't let you go. Obsession isn't logical, it's chemical, it's emotional, it's unconscious. And it's triggered not by what you give her, but by what you withhold. That's what most men don't get. They think giving more equals deeper connection. But true obsession starts when you leave room for her to invest. When you let her do the reaching, when you allow her to feel the emotional imbalance and seek to correct it. And the more emotionally disciplined you are, the more she feels drawn to figure you out. Because something in her knows, this man is different, this man doesn't need me, and that difference makes you magnetic. You don't need to be rich, you don't need to be famous, you don't need to have abs, you just need emotional gravity. That invisible pull that says, I don't chase, that posture that radiates calm dominance, that silence that holds presence. And when she enters your field, your text threads, your conversations, your vibe, and feels that gravity, she doesn't understand it, but she remembers it. She compares other men to it, because they all talk too much, they try too hard, they unravel in her presence. But you remain still. And that stillness whispered louder than any compliment ever could. The silent switch isn't an act, it's a shift in identity. It's when you go from external validation to internal power. When you stop asking, what should I say to her, and start asking, what am I doing with my time? When your silence is no longer passive, but purposeful. And that shift changes everything. Because now, when she reaches out, you don't rush to reply, not out of ego, but because you're focused. And when she gets a taste of your energy, she feels how rare it is. She knows you're not giving it lightly. And the scarcity of your attention, that's the seed of obsession. When a woman feels emotionally overfed, she stops craving. When she feels slightly starved, she starts chasing. That's the truth most men can't sit with. They hate the idea of withholding affection, of being misunderstood, of appearing distant. But obsession doesn't come from clarity. It comes from uncertainty, from contrast, from surprise. And when you alternate warmth with withdrawal, connection with silence, intensity with calm, you mess with her rhythm. You create emotional tension, and tension, when handled correctly, is the most addictive substance on earth. So stop trying to be unforgettable through words. Stop trying to win her over with constant contact. Be the silence that lingers. Be the pause that makes her nervous. Be the gap in the conversation that pulls her back in. Because obsession isn't created by being present all the time. It's created by being missed. And if you never give her the opportunity to miss you, to wonder, to long, then you'll never feel her full desire. You'll be liked, maybe even wanted, but never obsessed over. And brother, obsession is not about control. It's about emotional weight, and silence, when timed right, is the heaviest thing you'll ever use. Most men think the key to her heart is consistency, and sure, consistency builds trust, but it doesn't build obsession. Obsession is rooted in polarity, in unpredictability, in emotional contrast. When you're always available, always positive, always trying to make her feel good, you become predictable, and predictability is the death of emotional tension. But when you walk away after a powerful moment, when you leave the message on read, when you disappear just long enough to leave a question mark hanging in her mind, you create a spike, a jolt, and she feels it. It sticks with her. That's the moment the desire deepens and her brain says, what the hell is going on with this guy? It's not about ghosting. It's not about being hot and cold for the sake of manipulation. It's about creating space for curiosity. That's the root of obsession, curiosity with no resolution. And that happens when you show her glimpses of your depth, but never give her the full map. You open a door, then close it before she walks all the way in. You're emotionally present, but never emotionally owned. And every time she thinks she's figured you out, you show another layer. Not performatively, but because you actually have layers. That's the secret. You don't need to pretend to be mysterious. You are mysterious. Because your energy is not broadcasted, it's earned. Desire fades when there's no challenge. But challenge isn't about being combative, it's about being sovereign. When she feels that she can't sway your energy, that her beauty doesn't manipulate your attention, that her emotional swings don't shake your core, she feels both confused and turned on. And in that confusion, she becomes invested. She wants to know why you're not falling into her gravity. She wants to understand what makes you different, and the more questions she asks internally, the deeper the obsession forms, because the mind cannot rest when there's a mystery it can't solve. You'll notice it when she starts to mirror you, when she adopts your language, when she suddenly likes what you like, when her messages start to carry the same calm tone you do. That's when you know she's hooked, because obsession is not always loud. It's not screaming, it's echoes. It's her trying to match your rhythm because she can't handle the distance, and the silence you once gave her, it now exists inside her. She starts to feel quiet when you're not around. She starts to crave the noise of your presence just to fill the silence you left. And she doesn't even understand why. Men with calm, grounded energy are dangerous, not because they manipulate, but because they don't need to. They don't explain themselves. They don't overextend. They don't beg to be seen. And that self-containment, that inner peace, it challenges everything she's used to. She's used to men who give too much too fast, who explain every action, who fear her pulling away. But you do the opposite. You stand still, you watch, you disappear without losing your presence. And that duality, that contradiction, that's what flips the silent switch. Because obsession starts when she feels your absence louder than other men's presence. This is why you don't argue. You don't explain your silence. You don't fill every gap with justification. You let her feel the absence. You let her sit with her emotions. You let her wonder, because in that wondering, she begins to reflect. And when she reflects, she replays. When she replays, she refeels. And when she refeels, she wants more. That's the chain reaction. That's the echo you leave behind. It's not about being cruel. It's about being clean. You don't leave scars. You leave fingerprints, gentle, unmistakable, impossible to trace, but impossible to forget. Women don't become obsessed with men who make them feel good all the time. They become obsessed with the men who anchor them, who challenge their chaos without rejecting their femininity, who stay calm in their storms, who leave not to hurt them, but to breathe. And that breath, that pause, it feels like abandonment at first, but later she realizes it was respect. You weren't trying to overwhelm her with presence. You were giving her space to feel you fully. And when that realization hits, she doesn't just want you, she needs you. Not for validation, but for balance. Here's the quiet truth. The man who's most desired is not the one who speaks the most. It's the one whose energy lingers the longest. The one who can walk into a room and shift the air without saying a word. The one who can look her in the eye, see all her games, and not react. That's power. That's control. That's what she remembers at 2 a.m. when the phone is silent and the world is still. She doesn't miss the guy who sent 100 texts. She misses the guy who said one thing and it echoed for days. That's you. That's who you become when you master the silent switch. Obsession isn't sparked by your words. It's sparked by the void your silence creates. The moment she realizes you've stopped pouring into her, that you've stopped trying, that you've shifted your energy elsewhere, not out of anger but out of alignment, she starts to spiral, not because she hates you, but because she now sees the difference between a man who needs her attention and a man who already owns himself. And that realization hits her deeper than any compliment ever could. It humbles her, and in that humility, obsession takes root. So remember this, brother, your silence is not emptiness. It's a message. It says, I am whole without you. It says, I give energy by choice, not obligation. It says, I am not addicted to attention. I am loyal to truth. And that message, that vibe, it stays with her. It grows, it gnaws, and eventually it consumes. That's the silent switch. You don't flip it in her, you flip it in you. The moment you stop needing to be seen is the moment you become unforgettable. What you must realize is this. Obsession is not the result of charm, wealth, or status. It's the result of unresolved energy. When she senses you but can't fully grasp you, when she feels you but can't fully read you, when she's emotionally involved but still feels like she's barely scratched the surface, that's when you've become more than just another man. You've become an enigma, a presence that lingers even when you're not around. And because women are emotional processors, they need closure. But when you leave doors half open, when you vanish after connection, when you respond with presence but not permanence, you deny her that closure. And in the absence of closure, her mind spins, her body reacts, her soul attaches. The men who never unlock this silent switch are the ones constantly performing. They're always talking, always proving, always showing their best self like a magician throwing smoke and mirrors. But the man who sits in silence and lets her wander, he becomes the most addictive man she's ever known, because she's not addicted to his achievements, she's addicted to his mystery. She can't stop thinking about the way he paused after saying something meaningful, the way he looked at her like he already knew her soul, the way he smiled and vanished without warning. These aren't tactics, they're signatures, they're how emotionally sovereign men move. And once she's experienced it, every other man feels like noise. You want to turn desire into obsession? Start with holding your emotional availability, not in a cruel way, but in a way that tells her, my peace matters more than your approval. Don't explain why you're pulling back. Don't announce your silence. Don't punish with absence. Simply choose yourself. Let your actions be gentle but firm. Let your time be rare, your presence valuable, your words selective. Because when a woman realizes that your energy isn't free, that it's a privilege, not a default, she treats it differently. She starts to respect you, crave you, chase you, not for who you pretend to be, but for the calm, unshakable force you truly are. And that calm energy, it drives her mad in the best way. Because she's used to men breaking under pressure. She's used to begging for space. She's used to being the emotional center. But when she meets a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't react, doesn't chase, her programming short circuits. She begins asking questions she's never asked before. Why do I feel this way? Why can't I stop thinking about him? Why do I feel like I need to prove something to him? And when she reaches that point, you've already won. Because now, her obsession is not based on what you give, but on what you withhold, and what you withhold becomes sacred in her mind. The men who master this energy don't have to talk about boundaries, they embody them. They don't ask for space, they move into it. They don't seek approval, they operate from self-certainty. And this unnerves the feminine mind, because most women have never met a man who is both emotionally aware and emotionally detached. It's a rare balance, and when you strike it, when you can be tender without being soft, when you can be intense without being erratic, when you can care without collapsing, you enter her bloodstream. You don't just touch her heart, you possess her mind, and that's what obsession really is. Some women will fight this feeling. They'll resist, they'll project, they'll even accuse you of being cold or distant, but pay attention. Underneath that frustration is fascination. Underneath the anger is curiosity. They're not mad because you're mean. They're mad because they can't own you. And women only try to control what they can't forget. If she argues with your silence, it's because she's already obsessed with what that silence means, and you must stay composed, stay calm, don't respond emotionally. Let her wrestle with your energy, because in doing so, she's creating an emotional bond that goes far deeper than any text thread or compliment ever could. The most dangerous thing you can do is give her everything too soon. When you give too fast, you flatten the mystery. You kill the tension. You become familiar before becoming desired, and familiarity breeds boredom. But when you drip feed your attention, when you show up strong, then disappear to build. When you lean in just enough to spark connection, then pull back into your mission, you build contrast. And contrast is the foundation of obsession. She never knows what to expect. She never feels like she fully has you. And that ambiguity is the most addictive experience a woman can have. The truth is, desire dies in comfort, but obsession grows in unresolved tension. It feeds on the what if, the where is he, the does he still feel the same. And when you can control the emotional rhythm, when you can play with stillness the way others play with words, you flip that silent switch, not with manipulation, not with tactics, but with your energy, your presence, your disappearance, your emotional control. And suddenly, you're not just a man she likes, you're a man she can't forget. A man who haunts her thoughts long after the messages have stopped. Women don't fall in love with logic, they fall in love with experience, with the way you make them feel. And when your energy is unpredictable, but emotionally grounded, when your presence is strong, but but never desperate. When your silence speaks louder than other men's best lines, she won't be able to help herself. She'll attach, she'll project, she'll fantasize, and it won't feel wrong. It'll feel personal, it'll feel spiritual, because obsession isn't about what you say, it's about what you withhold, and what you withhold becomes sacred, powerful, unforgettable. So let this be your mantra: I don't chase, I anchor. I don't perform, I exist. I don't explain my silence, I own it. Because when you move like that, calm, grounded, emotionally untouchable, you trigger something in her that even she can't explain. And that something is obsession. That's the silent switch. Not a word, not a move, not a moment. A vibe, a pulse, a sudden shift in the wind that makes her pause and wonder if she ever had you to begin with. That's when she starts chasing. That's when she loses control. That's when you go from just another man to the one she can't forget.